Welcome to the Awake Space Astrology Podcast. I'm Lori Rivers, your host, here to help you with some inspiration to get those aspirations out into the world and to dazzle you with my accuracy. Had another troll hit me on TikTok yet again. They gave me a great chance to talk about the Kiss My Accuracy game. Oh, don't you love it when they try to say, you don't know what's going to happen to Trump. You're not very good at that. I'm like, I don't know. I called the first indictment back in March. I called that a year before it happened, to the month. Not going to lie. I was biting my fingernails because I said by March of 2023, and we were sitting at March 30th, and I was like, if this happens on April 1st, I am going to be so mad about that. But anyway, I don't know why people need to do that when I actually have record of what I predicted. But, call me arrogant. I call me accurate. Which, speaking of, we're working on the merch. I'm having an integration problem. I know, it's a little TMA. But we do have a KMA mug coming to you. Yeah, KMA. Kiss My Accuracy. Both a travel mug and a regular coffee mug, because life without coffee is, well, I don't know. It's just too crunchy. We have to have coffee. We also have a sweatshirt coming up that said, Astro Lori says it's going to be crunchy, PTO request. I thought that was kind of funny. We'll have more coming up as well, because you guys keep asking me for the merch. So we're going to bring it to you. It's coming. I have a store accidentally on TikTok now. And I say by accident because a lot of times if you sign up for something, it isn't active till you hit the activate my store. And now there's this store tab on my TikTok, and they changed my username to the Awake Space, which is the name of the store. And then people thought I had, I was like a troll or something. I was like, no, it was me. I accidentally got the stupid store and I changed my name. And oh, technology. Speaking of, and we've got the sun squared Jupiter right now, and the moon in Aries is currently right on top of the south node as I record this. So I just want you to know I'm completely unsupervised, and this may be a very, very interesting episode as the moon and the north node and the south node square off with my my sun and my Mercury, while Pluto opposes it. Yes, the pressure. So, what's up this week? We got, we're still coming off that full moon from the first, and we're heading towards the new moon. And the new moon in Leo is an interesting one. Don't freak out. So we'll talk a little bit about that here. Plus, we're getting ready for Mercury Retrograde later in the month. Please don't freak out. If you're a patron, you got your new astrology planner, since I can now see, if you're on YouTube, these are the new work glasses. The distance glasses are in the car because I really don't need them for anything more than that. These are still Coke bottles though, eh? All right, if you're listening on Spotify, they're a good inch thick, and they're the ultralight high index lenses that are compressed. Can you imagine if these were glass? They'd be like this thick. Oh my gosh. But anyway, I can see, and it's really cool, and I'm really happy. Working with Taryn Dufault on the the Call of Gaia deck. And we're looking for better packaging. So I'll talk a little bit more about the deck and what we're coming up with that. There's lots of exciting things. And then Casey and I are hitting the road tomorrow and heading to Oregon, going up to my spiritual community in Oregon City and staying with my mentor and soul sister. So my mentor, Thomas C. Chavez, and my soul sister, Gabrielle Chavez. They are very dear to my heart. We'll be doing some very fun metaphysical work up there, and we will be having a patron meetup on Sunday, August 13th at their place. And if you're a patron, the invitation went out. If you're a new patron coming in, you just go search through the posts. Okay, there's a really cute picture with Casey and I on it, if I do say so myself. But anyway, I'm having fun tonight. Uh, that meetup, it's going to be informal. There's a love offering. I'm not charging like a ticket price. I'm just saying, hey, since Thomas and Gabrielle have been so kind to let us have a meetup there, if you could bring a little something to donate, that would be nice. We'll just pass around a tin can for donations, and that'll help them in their work. Oh my gosh, it's amazing. I get new glasses. I can finally see. The doctor in 2021 that said I was going blind was wrong, and that's good news. So that's the upside of the Pluto transit opposite my Sun and Mercury. So sometimes it's good news. So what have we got going on this week? I didn't do the week ahead live stream. I have been doing for patrons because we do have the new astrology planner where I write the horoscopes. You get the same great information. I put in full moon activities, things to do to prep for the full moon and do during the week of the full moon. New moon affirmations. Those are really great. Every week I'm putting out new pages for that planner. And so all patrons that get horoscopes and above, that's the $15 tier and above, all of you got your new pages today. So, and we got more good stuff coming out through August as well for that. So that's kind of fun. That's actually a lot more fun than the way I was writing horoscopes before, which had kind of the set format. Oh my gosh, I was writing every 2 days and it was hard to keep up with. This is nice. It's a weekly thing that comes out. Yeah. So there's that. All right. So we're going to talk about this week's astrology and talk about the new moon in the next segment. A little bit of Mercury retrograde prep. And then we'll do some patron shout outs, and then I'll catch you up with what's happening with the Awake Space, some of the cool stuff happening with classes, and Woke Astrology Live, guys, it's up, it's live. We're gonna do Woke Astrology Live, where you get read to filth. So we've figured out the format. Last month was our test run. And so what we're doing is everybody gets a chance to be read. A chance. Okay. We're going to pick 3 charts at random. Okay. 3 charts at random. And I'll probably have Shane pick those. And we're not going to do it based on names. We'll just do it through registrations, right? Shane will do it. He's got a Capricorn moon. You can trust Shane. Who's Shane? He's one of my mods. He's the disembodied voice. He'll pick another celebrity chart for us to read to warm up, and then we'll read 3 people to filth. So everybody who comes gets to be part of the Q&A, part of the live audience. Everybody gets a recording. It's super fun. It's a great way to get your chart read at a fraction of the cost of a private 101 reading. It's super fun. And I don't know, you guys should let me know. I'll run a poll if you guys want to. This will be on Spotify. If you want group readings that are available from me or the other astrologers that are like 4 or 5 people, where it cuts the cost down on the individual. If you guys let us know and you don't mind having your chart read, in front of other people, then that's something we can start too, because we know it costs, but you're getting a lot. This isn't just vague information. And I always help people save money, make money. That's what I do personally. So it's a fair exchange. Alrighty, let's get going. Let's talk about this week in the next segment. Pardon my Libra moon, but I just really didn't like my hair in that last video. No, I'm not camera ready. I'm not wearing makeup. Oh, YouTube. I'd be like, oh my God, she looks like she's in her 50s. She is in her 50s. She is. When I was a 25-year-old starting to learn astrology, I looked at the astrologers who were probably my age now, and I was like, man, I want to be like that. And what I didn't realize is it would take all those years of practice and experience to be that person. Everybody wants to be an instant expert. I was no exception. And it requires time, study, experience to get super fluent. So let's take a look at this week. This week. Oh boy, it's interesting. So the crunchiest part of this weekend is actually while I'm recording the podcast, which is it's 8:36 p.m. West Coast time on Sunday, the August 6th. And that's pretty crunchy. But Tuesday is when the moon will be conjunct Uranus. And that's a pretty wild day. Let me pull up my chart for that day. Was I ready and prepared? Absolutely not. Let's get this going. Oh gosh, again, if you want it effective, find somebody else. I'll at least entertain you and dazzle you with accuracy. But I gotta find my chart first. Okay. While I'm doing this, I would really love some good thoughts from my dad. His name is Walter Rivers, and he just had knee surgery, and they had to go back and get some antibiotics. My dad fought off a massive staph infection in 2021. He didn't look like something was trying to brew. His birthday is August 8th. So he is not a young man, so all good thoughts would be appreciated for him and my mother, who is doing the caretaking. All right. Got my handy dandy chart software up. So what do we got? So with the moon on the 7th, the moon moves into, well, actually, yeah. I mean, late tonight, but on the 7th, we have the moon in Taurus, and it'll be approaching Jupiter, and Jupiter is square the sun. So tomorrow we could see some very interesting seismic actions. We could see issues with trucking, rail, anything to do with commodities. We might see more stuff coming out of Russia with grain shipments, between Russia and Ukraine. It's definitely going to get more heated in Niger. And it's interesting as a political analyst. And if you're new listening to me, I was a political analyst before I became an astrologer. And yes, I have done that for a job. And I often include it in my work here as an astrologer. And the situation in Niger is very interesting. And the propaganda coming from all sides is very interesting. So this is another proxy war between the United States and Russia. Yes, West Africa is trying to liberate itself from the EU and multinational corporations, as they well should. But the United States propaganda is this is jihadis, and again, using Islamophobia to get population into supporting, whatever action we decide to take. When the actual issue is uranium, okay? All of these countries that we get involved in, we don't care if they're democratic or not. We've upheld lots of dictators. It's about resources. It's always about resources. And Niger has a lot of uranium. I heard a statistic. I'd have to go verify it, but this is what I heard. 1 in 3 light bulbs in France is powered by uranium from Niger. And France was hugely responsible for a lot of brutality in West Africa. I've lived in West Africa and worked in West Africa as a political analyst. And, yeah, United States isn't the only brutal nation. Let me tell you, all of Western Europe has a part to play as well and not be held harmless. So I'm a little concerned about what's going on in West Africa, just stability wise. And I don't really care about cacao and all the other commodities that people may nationalize. That might be a really good thing. Do you really think Nestle deserves all that? But what I do care about is instability and what that means resource wise for just average everyday people anywhere in the world, because they suffer the most through instability. So, it's always the least of us who are harmed in war zones and in conflicts. And the news will make it sound like a numbers game, and those numbers are people. And so that's something to keep in mind. So I think we'll see conflict, long story short, and especially once the moon moves into a trine with Mars. Okay, so the moon will be in a trine with Mercury just before it conjuncts Jupiter and squares off with the sun, and that's where I think we might see some real interesting transportation issues. Casey, don't listen. We're on the road. We're driving. It's fine. By the time we have time to listen to this, we'll be all right. I promise. Although, man, traffic in LA might be a little snaggy. We're zipping out early in the morning, so it should be all right. Later in the day, and this might even be, let me double check. This might even be Tuesday. It might be the Tuesday chart I'm thinking of. Come on, give me a PM. Let's check our timing. Yeah, so by 5 p.m. Pacific on the 7th, the moon is only at 9 degrees. It's within a 5-degree conjunction. This is where transportation is going to get gnarly. So if you're in Portland, Seattle, LA, and you don't get out of work at 3 o'clock and you leave at 5 or 5:30, expect traffic to just get, craptastic. It may be a little gnarly, especially with the moon trine Mercury, and that could just be, impeded drivers, slow drivers. Believe it or not, some slow driver could hold up an entire, you might get a tractor on I-5 or something. Who knows what that is? So let's give a look here to August 8th. It's Tuesday that I am thinking. Now, Trump is probably going to keep shooting his mouth off. Remember, patrons, I told you in the patron-only podcast, the latest update, that for his solar return, his mouth is going to continue to get him into trouble. And his latest statements have been horrendous. And I keep wondering if he's going to try to go for incompetency as a defense, like he's not competent to stand trial. But then they're going to pull out the competency test from his presidency, and it's either fraudulent, okay, which, hello, or, boy, that'd be a shock, wouldn't it? Or they're gonna say, well, no, you had this test and it said you were competent. So yeah, I really think the things get tight for him. But we'll see something happen for him on the 7th, because, again, remember, he has the midhaven at 24 degrees of Taurus in his natal chart. And I already did a TikTok, and I was explaining how, Jupiter in his 9th house is not protecting him from legal matters. It's not a protection. It's a magnification. It just cascades. And he has more indictments to come. He has more trial dates to come. His organization has trial date. I mean, it's just everywhere. He's going to be bleeding out money. So there's that to look forward to. She's not unbiased. I'm not unbiased, but I'm a really good astrologer. Okay. So in 2016, I actually said he would win. Okay. In Facebook groups. And I got called all kinds of names from people. And I was like, hey, I don't like him, but he has the transits. Now I'm talking about his transits, and pardon me, I have never liked that man, not even when I was in high school and he was like being interviewed on TV as Mr. Eligible Bachelor creepy guy. I mean, he's always been ucky. He has the morals of a nudibranch. Remember, the man held up the Bible upside down. Come on. Whatever. I mean, if you're going to try to claim it, do it right. But anyway, so if you don't like what I'm saying, you don't have to listen to my podcast, and troll comments will be dealt with roughly. Woof. All right. I'm full of it today. So around 3 p.m. Pacific. So that's 5 p.m. Eastern. The moon will be conjunct Uranus. And that is probably going to be, it's going to be square Venus. And this could be some really weird financial news. This could be some breaking news. This could be to do with retail. This could do with shipping. This could do with all manner of things. It's getting interesting, and Mars is just starting to move into an applying opposition with Neptune. It's not there yet, but it's getting there. And I think we could see things with like actual shipping, like container ships, ports. Definitely going to see some very interesting weather with this on Tuesday. We could see tornadoes. We could see more erosion events. I called erosion events for the weekend. And did you see what happened in Juneau, Alaska? You know, that river doesn't rage like that. That is a glacier melt event. That's a big deal. Yeah, so, you know, I told you after July of 2022, climate change would not be ignored. You couldn't ignore it anymore. You couldn't say it wasn't real. It's happening. And I don't think we need to fight over the cause. I think we just need to mitigate as much as we can. Although I don't know what they're thinking about. Like, we're going to block out the sun. Oh my God. I was like, who thinks of these things? How about we stop making plastic? Just saying. We lived without it before. So yeah, you're just oversimplifying things, right? That's what they like to say. So it's a pretty crunchy week. The big day, I think, really is August 8th, which is my dad's birthday. And so, of course, it's going to be spectacular. He himself was born in August 8th, 1945. We just, Hiroshima happened, and then there was a break, and then Nagasaki happened in 1945. My dad was born in between that. We hold that astrological weather within us. So when we look at the events of the time you were born, so Dad brings excitement wherever he goes. I can tell you that much. And has dealt with a lot of very interesting situations in life. So I always look towards his birthday with kind of a what's going to happen that day attitude. The 9th, we've got the moon in Gemini. Why do I talk about the lunar transit so much? If you're a patron, you should know the answer by now. But if you're new to this, then I look at lunar transits because it governs the day-to-day living events. I know everybody likes to look for the hot and sexy, but if you really want to live your life intentionally, pay attention to the day in, day out life. I think that weather piles up, and I think we go from humid to super windy as the moon moves into Gemini. That will be happening on August 9th in the morning, early morning, and August 10th is where I think we're going to see some of the bigger weather, and the reason for that is we're going to have the moon square Mars. This could be some devastating weather. Devastating. And moon square Mercury as well. And I think we might hear more about truckers. This could be walkouts. I know the UPS strike was averted. They still haven't ratified it though, and we'll see what happens. I'm still not convinced it'll be 100% averted. But that could just be me going, wait, I was wrong about something, which I tell you guys all this time, I have an 87% accuracy rate. That means I don't get everything right. But anything above 60% is a very high accuracy rating. Anybody who's 50-50, that's just a good guess. But it's very accurate. So, and it's funny, I've had people come at me, trolls online come at me for that and go, well, that's not perfect. And I'm like, you don't understand statistics, do you? Okay. So, and I don't like being right about everything. It can be really harsh. So the next crunchy times is after the moon goes into Cancer, but it's really not like the 11th. I don't think it's going to be that crunchy. I think it's all right. Going into the 12th, I think you could see a lot of rain in some places, like major precipitation, potential flooding, erosion events, sinkholes, landslides, giveaway, shorelines and riverbanks getting eroded. Now, the good news is Marjorie Taylor Greene might do something dumb because her Mars is in Cancer and, Pluto is moving back to oppose it. And that also gives us joy. We don't have a birth time for her, but I know like clockwork, when that moon is in a cardinal sign, she does something spectacularly stupid. So, Venus will be conjunct the sun that day. Of course, it's square Uranus, it's square Jupiter. And again, that could be financial matters. The feds might do something. I don't know what the feds would do, but they might. We could hear bad news out of banking, mortgages, probably private lending, probably investment banking or private equity firms. Those types of things might be in trouble. We might hear more about a prestige brand or a celebrity with a scandal. So not necessarily one we've heard of, a new one. We could hear a new one. So there's that. And then, of course, on the 13th, which is the Awake Space meetup. And if you're a patron, your invitation is in there. And the moon will be in opposition to Pluto and squaring the nodes, starting at around 7 p.m. Pacific. Remember, for the moon or for any planet to be in aspect to the nodes, it's a 2-degree orb. So the moon will be in an approaching opposition to Pluto before that, but around 7 p.m., 8 p.m., we'll see the moon starting to square off. So there might be some very interesting events. Again, I'm looking at Asia, I'm looking at Europe, I'm looking at Africa, I'm looking at the Middle East, Australia, South Pacific regions, basically Eastern Hemisphere. We'll probably have more things going on. Western Hemisphere, it could just be weather events. So into the evening, there might even be some big thunderstorms. You might have issues with dams. You might have issues with quarries filling up, coal mines, things like that. We might see some nationalistic BS happen. But that's what I'm seeing. That's what I'm seeing. Things get squirrely, guys. And this is all kind of the setup. We've got Mercury in the pre-retrograde phase, and we'll talk about that in the next segment. We'll talk about Mercury pre-retrograde, not pre-shadow. We're going to talk real astrology, not pop astrology, not the YouTube astrology, not the tiki-taki astrology, but actual, real, factual astrology. Because if I hear pre-shadow one more time, I'm going to... Well, I'm not going to do anything, but I'm going to be really, really frustrated. All right. We'll come right back with patron shoutouts. All right, we got my favorite part of the podcast, because without patrons, there is no Awake Space. And so I want to thank every single one of you for your undying support. Now, here's the thing. Patreon had to do this upgrade with a payment processor, and over 100 of you who were sponsoring the podcast at various levels. Like, your banks didn't like it because of the upgrade to the system. So I sent out messages to everyone who had been declined because of the upgrade system. It's software, guys. So I sent you instructions on how to fix that if you want to continue being a patron. If you don't, I understand. I'm just letting you know I didn't kick you out, okay? I did not kick you out. And if you've been trying to resolve it, there's instructions now. So check your inboxes in Patreon. So our newest patrons, we've got Valerie, Patricia, Nikki, Courtney, Ariana, Mary Frances, Patricia, Aaron, Jesse, Cheyenne, Crystal, Allie, Beth, Luisa, Alyssa, Paola, Superplin, Irene, Andrea, Preeti, Judith, David, Jennifer, Lindsay, Anna, welcome. Thank you for being the newest patrons of the Awake Space. We have such cool stuff happening in the horoscopes with the new planner, astrology planner, and I just keep adding to it. It is so exciting. And it's got me really excited to start writing some different kinds of astrology books that are a little bit more visual. Because I think, astrology can be a lot like studying anthropology or another kind of social science with math. And it's just, if you read some of the old books, they're very mind-numbing. And I remember when I was younger, I'd be like, just get to the point, because they'd be like long and drawn out, and I'd be like, just give me the answer, which it's never quite that simple, and yet at the same time we can make things more fun and engaging to learn from. So I'm excited to get started on some of that. Casey and I are both writers, and we're looking forward to this road trip for inspiration and even just time to write while we're on the road. We're going to shoot up I-5 to get to Oregon, but we're going to take the coast back down, which is super fun. Excited about that. So my darlings, we're going to talk more about Mercury retrograde. I don't think I'm going to, it's kind of a pain to edit this as a video. So we're going to talk about Mercury retrograde and how to prepare for it. Mercury stations retrograde on August 23rd. And you're going to have everybody and their mother freaking out about it and blaming it during its 3-week period of retrograde because, Mercury is, at fault for everything. Poor Mercury. There is a whole lot of astrology going on. Okay, there is a whole lot of astrology going on. You can't just blame one planet for everything that goes on. That's not what happens. The moon changes signs every 2.5 days. The sun is moving a degree per day. Mars is actually getting ready to ingress on the 24th into Libra. That should be a very kapowy kind of day. What's a kapowy? It's a kaboom. That's what it is. I come with sound effects. Should be very volatile. Libra Mars is not a passive Mars at all. It's not. It just is a different kind of energy. It's the flip side of Aries, but that does not make it passive at all. In fact, when it comes to social justice or fairness, it's a lot. So, let's talk about that Mercury retrograde period. So, this is how it works. A planet that stations, okay, looks like it's stopping in the sky. I said it looks like it because it doesn't really happen up in the sky. It's happening from a geocentric point of view. So, to us, standing on Earth looking up, it looks like, oh, wow, Mercury put on the brakes. That's the station. And it does a switch of direction. In this case, on the 23rd, Mercury will station retrograde. We are currently, right now, as of August 6th, 2023, we are in the pre-retrograde phase. It is not the pre-shadow. It is not the shadow phase. It is the pre-retrograde. There's no such thing as a pre-shadow. You do not walk out your door at 9 a.m. and look on the ground and go, that's where my shadow is going to be this afternoon. It's not how it works, okay? It's just not. It just is pre-retrograde. It means it, to our eyes, if we were observing the planet with a telescope, it would look like it's slowing down, okay? So with Mercury about to station retrograde in Virgo, which is one of the signs that is ruled by Mercury, this one should be kind of interesting. It's not going to be, at least I think, it's not going to be quite as harsh as the retrograde from Mercury in Taurus was. And that is because Mercury in Taurus spent some of its time square Pluto in Aquarius. And that was a lot. That was really weird energy. We as human beings had never observed that before because Pluto has never been in Aquarius for us to observe, right? We weren't aware of it. So astrologers weren't chronicling. Okay. So being conscious of something matters. And so this time Mercury, it isn't going to be making a hard aspect to Pluto. So this should be pretty good. It'll be bumps. It'll be foibles. You guys have to stop freaking out every time something doesn't go your way or work out exactly to plan, because it's probably not. You need to take the attitude of the learner. You need to have some curiosity. You don't want to jump to conclusions with this retrograde. These are all things you need to pay attention to prepare for it. Did I put that in this? I think I did put in Mercury retrograde prep into this version of the maybe I closed it out. I think I did, though. I think I did a little Mercury retrograde prep. You know, this is, you just want to take care of things like get your oil changed, you know, anything to do with your vehicles, anything to do with phones, communications devices, internet connections. Check your subscriptions to online platforms. Make sure all your payment information is up to date. Make sure your payment gateways are all up to date. All of that stuff is going on. You want to make sure of that. I'm doing that just so it doesn't sound like a single If you're going to, speaking of if you're going to be doing any public speaking, you want to double check your notes. You want to, really prepare for the public speaking moment. If you're getting ready to publish a book or put out an album, anything that's been recorded, have a backup. Just make a backup. Don't rely on autosave. Hit the save button on all documents obsessively. These are all important things because I can guarantee you, dollars to donuts, there's probably going to be forced computer updates. There's going to be a lot of debugging and probably hacking. So, change your passwords, do your maintenance, do all of that. With Mars getting ready to move into Libra, and the sun getting ready, the day Mercury goes retrograde, the sun moves into Virgo. And then the next day, Mars moves into Libra. It's going to be very volatile. And everybody and their mother, I can guarantee you, is going to blame Mercury retrograde instead of Mars ingressing into Libra. Why? Because most of the people who talk about astrology are just regurgitate, burble, talk about the same thing as everybody else is talking about without ever researching it. Oh man, while we're at it, next segment, I will talk about why the Black Moon Lilith is bullshit. I need to get that off my chest. I did a TikTok about it and it didn't get very many views, and I'm like, people don't care about research. They like the drama. They like the drama. By the way, we'll see a lot of that during the Mercury retrograde. Everybody will have something to say. Even more than normal. And I'll be trying gotchas, but it's not going to work out. So it'll be really funny. I look forward to the trolling. Trolls kind of help you get more views. So thank you, trolls. Thank you, trolls. Kiss my accuracy. All right. Yeah. Why don't we talk about Black Moon Lilith and why it's BS in the next segment? I think that would be really fun. And then I'll answer Q&A from patrons at the end of this show. All right. So astrology is a field of study, guys. And that means you have to do research and homework. And I know they've dumbed education down and they didn't teach people how to research over the last 30 years. But even before that, we had astrologers trying to make things fit. And there is good academic astrology where people actually do proper research, do observation, notation, look for repetitive data sets, and measure accuracy. And then there's, hey, let's just do whatever we want astrology. And that's where things like Black Moon Lilith and asteroids come into play. And it didn't just start in, the 70s, although it had a huge uptick. Okay. I'll get into that in a minute. But it also was going on in the 1800s. You have to remember, it got much easier to publish material in the late 1800s into the 20th century. And there was this guy named Walter Gornold who went by the name of Safariel, obviously because it was cooler and it sounded very spiritual. Can you see the aesthetic coming on? Now, he had some very interesting astrological observations. I've read a lot of Safariel's work. However, when it came to the Black Moon Lilith, this is what happened. So he was a 19th century astrologer. That means he did most of his astrology in the 1800s. And he felt that he was also into theosophy and energy work, and there's nothing wrong with that. I've studied theosophy as well. But when we're doing astrology, we can't just go, oh, I feel like it's there. And he made a claim. He made a claim about the Black Moon Lilith in, the early 1900s. I'm trying to find it here. Let's see. So the Black Moon Lilith isn't real. It was a theoretical point. No one has ever found it. It was 1918. He claimed he saw it. No one else has been able to see it. Nobody else. So it isn't a thing. I'm also not a fan of the use of the mythos of Lilith. Okay. And it's okay to have the story, but I don't understand why even feminists grabbed onto it, because it's a vengeful demon goddess who was spurned, and we deal with our resentments, our deep sexuality, and it's back to the Madonna and the horror, really. Okay. That's an archetype. You're either a Madonna, you're chaste and you're virginal, or you're like a whore and you sleep with anything. Those are patriarchal points of view. We are mammals. We have primal urges. We have the urge to procreate, and procreating for our species feels good. And so we like to do that. It doesn't make you less feminine to enjoy it. It doesn't make you more masculine to enjoy it. It doesn't make you more feminine to not enjoy it, and less masculine if you don't. And it's this very rigid social cultural mindset that leads to bad interpretations and make it fit astrology. When we get into asteroids, this one is absolutely mind-numbingly insane on why people choose to do what they do with them. And I'm not talking about you, okay, but I'm talking about actual astrologers who use this logic. It makes me question their skills, because they'll take an asteroid that was named by an astronomer or an amateur astronomer who discovered it and go, oh, we must apply the myth. because it has a name. We don't sit and take the time to observe throughout its orbital cycle. We don't look for any influence. We just say, oh, well, it was named after Chiron, so it must mean it's the wounded healer. And this is going to show all of your wounds. There was no other study to it than that for people to grab onto it and run with it and say, it was named that, therefore the energy rings true. And they'd try to tie quantum physics into it. And I'm like, I don't know. Like Chiron was discovered in 1977. It has a 51.5-year orbit. We haven't seen a full orbit of it yet. And in my experience, it really isn't about the wound you cannot heal. It's more like a light post on the healing path. It can be. But you've got a bunch of people saying, oh, well, I think Chiron should actually rule Virgo, not Mercury. Even though Mercury's sign is the Cadius, the sign of the healer. You know, that's what healers would wear, the serpents and the pole. Okay. So when we go to make things fit, we don't do ourselves any favors, because what we're doing is we're reinforcing stereotype, social cultural programming. You know, so a lot of psychologists will do this. And again, I'm not against psychology, but they'll tell you how broken you are if you've had these things happen. And you got to get pretty deep in before they say, hey, healing's possible. And I'm not talking about all of them. If you're one of the psychologists who reminds people they have neuroplasticity and they can heal, that's awesome. But I'm talking about the manipulation of social cultural thought. Okay, I know I'm getting heavy here. I've been sassy, but now I'm getting heavy. And the reason I'm getting heavy is because if you're trying to look up your next boyfriend by the asteroid, you're not helping yourself, okay? You're making it fit. Instead of working on yourself to attract in, using your Venus, to attract in someone who is a really good match for your energy. Because if you're always thinking down on yourself, if you're like, I can't trust people, I'm always getting screwed over, are you going to attract somebody who really cares? Are you? Probably not. And I'm not saying it's your fault you attracted the no good so-and-so, but if you're not expecting better than that, what else can you see? It's not a fault thing. It's a frequency thing. We all do it, including me. All right? We all do it. And it's where we tune our focus. So what do you use? You use the established planets. And people say, well, what about Pluto? Well, there's some really bad interpretations for all of the planets, including Pluto. Like when the astrologers from the 60s said, you know, Pluto was the destroyer. It's not the destroyer, it's forced evolution. And we've seen that play out. We haven't watched it for a full orbit, but we've seen it play out time and time again. And I don't think it's a higher octave of Mars. I kind of feel like it's a higher octave of Saturn. And I know I'm not the only astrologer who's made that observation. I think it can act like the higher octave of Mars. And there could be people here who know a little bit more about astrophysics or astronomy, and they're like, well, what about all the trans-Neptunian planets? And it might be that Pluto is a symbol that we use that represents all the trans-Neptunian planets. There's still a lot of study to be done and observations to be done. You cannot claim for certain to know everything about anything when it comes to astrology, and you have to do research, but some of it's really easy. So let's say the asteroid Lilith, it wasn't even named after Lilith the myth. It was named after Lily Boulanger. She was a French composer. It had nothing to do with Lilith. And so there's a lot of sensationalism, there's a lot of drama, and I think trying to use myths as an anchor point, and people say, well, but they're archetypes. They are one cultural viewpoint of archetype. And we know so much more about how energy works. We know so much more about how the human brain works. We know from our studies of other subjects that we have social, cultural constructs. And if you're going to live in that lens, you're limiting your perception and how you can live your life. You can deconstruct that and reconstruct with new understanding. So that's why I don't use Black Moon Lilith or the asteroids and even Chiron. I'm going to be teaching about Chiron in the Planet of the Month Club in September to kind of set the record straight. And it's based off my experience of 3 decades because I was just as enchanted with it. Nobody comes to astrology and dedicates their life to it because it's coffee, astrology, and food for me. Coffee, astrology, and food. You don't do that if you didn't have a reason. And I was trying to make sense of my own life. And just like so many of you, you know, I on the CS or on the childhood trauma scale, 9 out of 10. 9 out of 10. 0 clinical markers. Worked really hard to get them, and astrology was part of the pathway. And when I came to astrology, I was looking for all the reasons too. Why did these things happen to me? What was wrong with me to have those things happen to me? Why would I pick this life? Did I choose it? All those things. And no, you do not choose your trauma. But you can choose to heal. And that is in your birth chart as well. We can see trauma indicators in a birth chart. But it doesn't mean you chose them. It means you equipped yourself to navigate through challenge in life, and there was no guarantee what was going to happen and how it was going to happen. What we can see is likelihood. Astrology is not a one-size-fits-all subject. It is not you just regurgitate information because you saw it in a video or listened to a podcast. You don't believe it just because somebody said it. If somebody says it, go listen. I'll hear rumors online about something. So like recently people have been saying that Melania is in Slovenia and everybody is carrying forth that rumor. I went and I started research. I have found no evidence that that is true. No evidence. So if somebody says something, so like when people were telling me, well, the ancient Greeks didn't care about aspects. And I was like, when did 0 get used in math? And I started doing a massive research project of my own, just a little passion project on the history of the math of astrology. The Greeks didn't care because they didn't have the math. They would have cared if they did. 0 wasn't used. They couldn't do it. They couldn't do it. That's why you have perfections and you don't have return charts in traditional astrology. They could not do the math that accurately. Okay. It's about accuracy if you want to be really good. If you want to know why I'm accurate, I've lived, breathed, and slept this since 1995. It's almost 30 years. We're 2 years away. I don't know what we're going to do to celebrate 30 years, but we'll do something. Okay. 25 years old. I hadn't turned 26 yet. Kind of crazy. Right? And so it's important. It's important to not make it fit. Question before you believe stuff. How many people listen to my video and go, oh no, I'm screwed, when I'm saying, hey, it's not a problem? Stop. That kind of thinking is hurting you. You have everything to guide you to your best life in your natal chart. Yeah, you can see problems. You can also see the solutions in that chart. And that's what we cover in Patreon. That's what I go through in my readings. If you're a patron this month, the discount is 30% off all readings. And we got Woke Astrology Live, Reading You to Filth, coming up. So I'll have that link in the show notes for you. You guys have got to stop trying to make things fit. And I know there's some really famous people who've written books and they give all these, like, there wasn't enough feminine energy in traditional astrology. And I'm like, it's not that hard to actually take binary out of it. Energy is energy. Stop looking at it as male and female and just look at it as human. Because you can't tell from an astrology chart if someone is a man or a woman. Period. Biologically, from birth, you cannot tell. You can see it's a human being. So using masculine and feminine, and in the interpretations, in the old school way, there was a lot of damaging accusations. So if a man had a Cancer Mars, it was worse than if a woman had a Cancer Mars. That's damaging. There isn't a better or worse Mars to have. That line of thinking is hierarchical, elitist, and patriarchal. And it's time we blew that out. And that's what we do every day at the Awake Space. I'm not saying life is just sunshine and roses, but there's always a solution to be found. And there's always a different perspective that we can tune ourselves to live more fulfilling and rewarding lives. And that's what I'm all about. All right. Let's do some astrology Q&A. All right, it's time for some astrology Q&A from the patrons at the Awake Space. Oh. All right, Andy asked a really good question. And Andy asked, if I do not live in my birthplace or where I was born, should I read rising sign horoscopes based on what houses the moon transits in both the natal chart and the relocation chart? And Andy, in your case, absolutely. You were born in one country, almost half the world away from where you live today. So yeah, your location has changed greatly. If you've just moved, 100 miles, 500 miles away from home, then your birth chart works just fine. But for people who were born in one place and moved very far away from it, so maybe Los Angeles to New York, or maybe Florida to Washington State, if you were born in the Middle East and you live in the US, or vice versa, if you live in England, if you were born in England and then live in Italy, those would be times you'd look at the relocated chart. As long as you've lived there for like over 6 months, you could look at those transits, and it's just speaking of research, it would be great to keep notes in your astrology planner. Oh, I'm putting in more pages for notes, but it'd be great to keep a little journal to see which ones apply. I always like to say that the day-to-day life things, paying bills, work stuff, car stuff, they're all physical day-to-day. You'll see that in a relocated chart transit. Whereas the internal work, if you're working on yourself, if you're doing inner child work, if you're doing therapy, that's going to be your natal chart. Okay, so good question. I love questions. We had so many good questions in Planet of the Month Club today. We've been doing Saturn. That's our Planet of the Month for August. Gave some great homework. I look forward to seeing what everybody comes up with. All right. Okay. I'm looking for the next one. Let's see. Sharon, what are some of the most difficult transits and some of the best transits? Oh man, that's a dangerous question, Sharon. It really depends on how old you are when some of these transits happen. Before you're an autonomous adult, certain transits can be a lot harder, like Saturn and Pluto transits to very sensitive parts of the chart, like Mercury, Moon, Mars, Sun to some degree. Those are harder to go through as little ones. As adults, that gets a little easier. It can still be kind of crunchy, but it's certainly a lot easier to go through when you have agency, because you can do something about life. As a kid, you don't really have any agency to make decisions or change your environment, or you just have to kind of put up with whatever you're going through. That can be very difficult. So I would say Saturn and Pluto transits tend to be quite extreme. Uranus transits can be very extreme depending on the person. They can be extremely positive. They can be extremely like, what the F? And it depends on the person and their chart. The best transits, actually Jupiter transits can be tough too. It depends. Jupiter transits can go one or the other way. It's just kind of more is more is more in my experience. Some of the best transits can be the sun going over your Venus. That happens pretty much every year. Well, it does happen every year. Venus over your Mars. That happens about every 18 months. Uranus conjunct Saturn was pretty cool, though. I had a really good transit with that. It just kind of took chains off, social chains. It was really cool. I don't know. It just really depends on your perspective and your chart on what is best and worst. Right now I have Pluto opposite my Sun and my Mercury, and it's the least harsh Pluto transit I've experienced. And I've had a major Pluto transit every year of my life. And let me tell you, the first 30 years were pretty intense. 2016 was pretty intense when Pluto started squaring off with my moon. Of course, I had Jupiter on top of my moon transit. Sometimes it's the combos that are harder. It's not just the one transit. You get the 1-2 punch. In our Saturn class today, somebody in the class had Saturn in Capricorn, and I was like, you poor thing. The poor Saturn and Capricorn people going through their Saturn return during 2020, 2021. They are spiritual badasses. That was intense. That's one of the reasons I went public as an astrologer. I was saying about those poor people, and then we had Mars and Aries squaring off with it. It's just like, oh my God, that you guys are still here and kicking. The badassery. You get that award. So that's what I've got to say. I can't really speak to a specific one. I think it would be unethical. But those are some examples. It's, again, because people will kind of run with what you say and take it out of context or misunderstand it. So there's that. Let's see. Okay. So, hi, Chris. Chris asks, how is a planet of one sign but in a house of another to be interpreted? For example, my Jupiter, and that would be Capricorn Jupiter, is in my second house, which is ruled by Sagittarius. Is this planet still considered in fall as both signs to be read together? No. And I don't like the detriments and the dignities and all of that. Again, that's hierarchy and patriarchy. So, and again, Saturn is structure. How the structure happens is based on the sign. Same like Jupiter is the magnifier. How it magnifies depends on the sign. So if you have, I too have a second house that starts with Sagittarius, and we have Capricorn in there as well. The sign on the house governs the house. The sign on the house governs the house. The secondary sign is like accenting. So one of the things I did with natal chart foundations, and we'll do it again in the fall, is we did an exercise that helped people really understand the theme of the house based on the ruler. In your case, that's Sagittarius. And then the accenting that happens. So it's kind of like, think of it like accessorizing an outfit. That would be the Capricorn. So it would, to me, that second house, again, and I'm very familiar with this one because I have a Sagittarius second house too. I earn my money best. I attract money through my knowledge and my expertise and my experiences or my storytelling, right? But I still like to be physically secure. So like that's something I'm looking for. So now that Jupiter in Capricorn in your second house means you would benefit from more traditional work or traditional investment, or, you know, you attract tangible things to you as well. So you're good at seeing those opportunities. That's what that would mean. Okay, that was a good question. And I know that gets confusing for people, which is one of the reasons why, whole sign became popular, because people had a hard time understanding how to interpret the different signs within the houses. Okay, Kate Elizabeth was asking me, this is from a long time ago. I did an episode where I talked about keeping track of transits in relationship to your chart as an observational astrology practice, just to make it practical for you. And they asked, what questions would be most helpful to ask yourself as you're checking on the transits or journaling each day? And she remembered correctly that I said to record the day first and then check the transits, but there are some questions you ought to ask yourself as to how the transits of the day apply to your life. Could I go into more detail? Yeah, I think, and I don't remember that podcast, but I know me. And so if I said there's things you should ask yourself, it's to stop you telling the story. Okay, this person did me dirty, blah, blah, blah. Instead of giving the story of this person gave a rumor about me and now I'm embarrassed and how dare they, it would be, what have I learned about my interactions with other people? Did you over disclose this to this person? Did you not have boundaries? Did you rightfully trust them and they found themselves untrustworthy? You want to question it. And I'm not saying blame yourself in the least, but it's more like, what are you getting out of the experience? And you could also ask yourself, telling the story, what good is it doing for me? Is it helping me? What can I do differently next time? And it could be maybe you're clumsy during a certain lunar transit and, you notice for 3 months in a row, you've tripped over things. You're like, what else can I do to stay more present in my body during this particular lunar transit? Something like that. I hope that made sense. That was a good question. I may have answered that one before. I'm cleaning these questions out, and I will start doing these in the Patreon as well. What are some red flags to look out for when trying to learn about astrology? This question comes from Alyssa. I kind of talked about that in the segment about Lilith and the asteroids. People can speak with authority, and even a written and published book from an actual publishing house can be full of misinformation. Okay. You really want to cross-reference things. You really want to do some digging. And another thing would be, if it's being hyped up, double question it. Know why this is an important thing to learn. Like if things go in fads, that's why the North Node is a popular thing. The North Node of the moon is got everybody mystified when all celestial bodies, including the Earth and the Sun, have nodes. We are fascinated by the lunar nodes because Jan Spiller wrote a book in the 1990s, and it's a cool book. I own the book, but people overemphasized it. And it's not even her fault they overemphasized it. It's just she wrote such a good book. People really weighed in of like, oh, this is why, instead of doing the rest of the astrology. So and then if you're reading older literature, understand the time that it was written in. Don't take it verbatim. Understand that interpretation is based on a cultural and social lens. And so take things with a little grain of salt when it comes to interpretations. And then also don't try to run before you can walk. Don't try to do mundane astrology as a beginning astrologer. Okay? That's really important. I think a lot of time, even looking at aspects, if you just started, and if you have never taken a class with a actual astrologer who knows what they're doing, then trying to do a deep dive into aspects or just regurgitating information people have said, that does not make you an expert astrologer. Slow your roll. Be thorough. Treat astrology like a language. Do observational exercises. That's the best thing you can do. So be really, really careful. And then if it hypes it up, if it makes something seem angelic or it makes something seem demonized, it's usually a red flag. So if it's really misogynistic, patriarchal, but then again, you're going to see that in books written, before the last 5-6 years. You're going to see a lot of patriarchy. You're going to see a lot. In fact, astrology itself was birthed during the advent of patriarchy. So it's important to take those interpretations with a grain of salt. It's not always a red flag. Sometimes it's just you have to step back and be like, okay, well, I see what they said. How could I look at that a little differently? I hope that helped. All right, guys, I got to finish packing for the road trip with Casey. I'm excited about it. Very excited about this. And I'll be recording this podcast up in Oregon, in my home stomping grounds. And hopefully we'll have my mentor as a guest, Thomas C. Chavez, if all goes to plan, taking my recording equipment. Yay! So I look forward to giving you updates on TikTok and in Patreon, the Discord, and we're going to have a good time. Hopefully I see you in Portland as well. Hopefully. I hope to see you in the Portland area on Sunday. And if you're from Oregon, I know it's not Portland. I know it's Oregon City, but other people don't know that. All right. Bye-bye.